to say to not only this Democratic Convention, but to the people of America, that what we need to do on this issue is emancipate not only the Democratic Party, but the people of this country from the wrong foreign policy the Republicans started under Dulles, under the Republican regime in the 1950s.
Addressing the 1968 Democratic Convention on the most controversial issue of the day, Vietnam, Wayne Morris exhibited his classic style in expressing his basic political philosophy. Using great oratorical skills to educate his audience, Oregon's senior senator was a unique example of a principled politician who refused to compromise on what he believed was morally and constitutionally correct.
He was a giant of a man, in my opinion, an authentic American hero. I used to try to categorize what it was that made him what he was, and it was a combination of, first of all, brains, physical stamina, integrity, and hard work.
He never stopped being a teacher. He would do his homework very thoroughly. He knew what he was talking about, and he knew how to express it very well.
I wish somebody would tell me why I should vote hundreds of millions of dollars of your money for military aid, and we're shipping them bullets, and we ought to be shipping them bread and literacy. For economic well-being and literacy will make them free. Bullets will never make them free.
Wayne Morris, whose career in the United States Senate spanned 24 years, grew up on this dairy farm near Madison, Wisconsin, where he was greatly influenced by the populist tradition of Senator Robert La Follette and other progressive Republicans. After receiving his law degree from Columbia, Morris moved to Eugene, Oregon, where at the age of 30, he became dean of the University Law School. Wayne, his wife Mildred, and their 3 daughters lived on a 27-acre ranch where they enjoyed the rural life. Wayne was always interested in farming and livestock, and the show horses and Devon cattle that he raised here won many awards. Appointed by President Roosevelt to the War Labor Board in 1942, Wayne Morris gained national recognition as a skilled arbitrator by settling labor disputes during the war. Because of his principled stands and tough-minded approach to complicated issues, he was encouraged to run for public office. He began his political career as a Republican when he was elected to the Senate in 1944. And after being re-elected in 1950, he soon established himself as an outspoken critic of the Democratic administration.
I think the American people are entitled to a change in administration, so at least there's a chance of cleaning out the kind of corruption that has come to characterize the executive branch of the Democratic Party now in power.
Although he sometimes criticized the actions of President Truman, Wayne Morris frequently voted with liberal Democrats, especially on domestic issues. He initially supported Eisenhower's presidential nomination in 1952, but when Ike picked Richard Nixon as his running mate, Morris finally became disillusioned with the Republicans and quit the party to become an independent.
I came up in Wisconsin as a progressive Republican. I was brought up in the Bob La Follette tradition. I went to Oregon as a progressive Republican. I hoped we could liberalize the Republican Party. I tried hard to do it. And when it was perfectly clear that they were out to destroy me, I just left them.
Senator Lyndon Johnson and other Democratic leaders have said you'd be welcome into the Democratic Party anytime you care to join.
Well, they've been very nice to me, and the Democratic leaders in my state have been very fair to me. In fact, they're urging me to run as a Democrat in 1956, and I may very well do that. I will do it if I become convinced that that's the best way that I can help a sound liberal program in this country.
Attorney Charles Porter, a 2-term Democratic congressman from Oregon during the late 1950s, worked with Wayne Morris on legislation and was a close personal friend.
He signed up with the Republicans, found out he could not change them, and he may have gone in with that idea, that he didn't like them, but he was going to change them, and he gave them a few years to try to change, and they didn't change, so he had no choice but to get out and become a Democrat. We're very glad he did.
In a bold political move, Wayne Morris ran for the Senate in 1956 as a Democrat and vigorously supported Adlai Stevenson's bid for the presidency. One of the issues of this campaign was the attempt by the Republican administration to promote private rather than public development of natural resources in the Northwest.
I'm distressed that the Republicans want to give away the great Hell's Canyon dam site to build small dams rather than to fully develop that enormous power potential. I think they'll waste as much power there as this great dam Bonneville produced.
They'll waste the power of this dam. Let me tell you what I'm saying in the campaign. Give us the Democratic administration, and we'll give you Hell's Canyon Dam. We're not going to let the Republicans give it away to the private utilities.
I'm glad to hear you are, and I know you are, because I know how valiantly you fought to keep the people's resources for the benefit of the people.
Even though he had switched parties, Wayne Morris won easily as a Democrat in the 1956 election. Oregon voters wanted him back in Washington, continuing to fight for legislation that would help the ordinary working person and curb the influence of big business. During his next 2 terms in the Senate, Wayne pushed hard for agricultural parity bills to help farmers and strong civil rights legislation to improve the quality of life for minorities. And his campaign to increase federal support for schools earned him the title Mr. Education.
Here is a memo from Senator Wayne Morse to you on better schools.
I want you to know where I stand on education. Too many American boys and girls receive second-class education, and too many teachers inadequate pay. I will fight for the Morse Federal Aid to Education bill. We must meet our education emergency now.
Wayne Morse was the kind of person who thought of government as a constructive force for helping most of the people. He didn't believe in trading votes, and he'd say so. He was not one to compromise principle. He wouldn't sell out for any price.
He wanted the facts. He was not greatly interested in people's opinions because the opinions didn't help him. He wanted to know what facts they had that could help him form an opinion based on facts.
Now, he had a formula, and he would say that thing many times, and it was the essence of his teaching as a politician. You go where the facts go, and you do it regardless of the political consequences.
Over the years, Wayne Morris established a reputation as a man of high integrity and independent judgment, and he earned the respect of politicians from both parties. But no person or issue was safe from his fierce criticism when the principles he sought to uphold were being violated. His uncompromising positions often antagonized his congressional colleagues and attracted the attention of the national media.
What does it take to please the senior senator from Oregon?
Just clean government.
Wait just a second, please, sir. He has gone through 2 presidents, and he's unhappy. He's run through 2 parties, and he's unhappy. What does it take to please the senior senator?
Just clean government, and I'm going to continue to raise this voice for clean government, whether there's a Democrat or a Republican in power, if I think under that administration there are evidences of injustices and unclean government. Have we gone so far down the road of a police state in America that a president shall not be subject to criticism if an elected official of a free people believes his record deserves criticism?
Wayne Morris took the strongest stand of his political career when he was quick to criticize the abuse of presidential power in escalating the Vietnam War. In 1964, he was one of only 2 senators to vote against the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, which President Johnson used to expand American involvement in Southeast Asia.
Well, our government has no right to send American boys to their death in any battlefield in the absence of a declaration of war. And Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution vests the prerogative of declaring war in the Congress of the United States. And no war has been declared in Southeast Asia. And until a war is declared, it is my position that it is unconstitutional to send American boys to their death in South Vietnam or anywhere else in Southeast Asia.
He recognized that the war was generally supported by the Congress, generally supported by the people of the United States. But that didn't stop him from speaking as a former professor of constitutional law and expounding how the president is supposed to get supported by the Congress and have a vote before we embark on what was a major war.
What I'm saying is, under our Constitution, all the president is the administrator of the people's foreign policy. Those are his prerogatives,
And I'm pleading that the American people be given the facts about foreign
Senator,
policy.
that the American people cannot formulate
Why
and
do you say
execute
that?
foreign policy.
Why, you're a man of little faith in democracy if you make that kind of announcement. I have complete faith in the ability of the American people to follow the facts if you'll give them.
It isn't
and my
a lack
charge
of
against
faith,
my
Senator.
government is we're not giving the American people the facts.
Although he faced a tough battle for re-election in 1968, Wayne Morris persisted in taking his message about the undeclared war to the American people. His views were very controversial for the time and not necessarily popular with his constituents, but he felt compelled to point out the illegality and immorality of our military presence in Vietnam.
It's an ugly reality, and we Americans don't like to face up to it. But the unilateral course of action that we're following in Southeast Asia at this very hour makes us the greatest threat to the peace of the world, because we know that the Asians are never going to lay off. They're going to see to it that the white man gets out of Asia as far as any attempt to maintain a foothold there.
His job was to call them as he saw them, regardless of the consequences. That's the way he looked at it, and that's the way he acted with regard to the Vietnam War. And of course, that's why he was defeated in 1968, because most of his constituents, or a good many of them, enough of them, thought that he was wrong at that time.
The defeat of Wayne Morris in 1968 ended the career of one of the most outspoken senators in American history and left a void that is yet to be filled. There are few politicians today with the independence, intelligence, and integrity that characterized Wayne Morris, and there is no one in Congress with the political courage to speak out as Morris did against American intervention in the affairs of other countries.
And if Wayne Morris wanted to be remembered for one single thing, it would be that our foreign policy should reflect the decency, the ideals of the American people, and not just the selfish interests of some big corporations and some military people who are obsessed with the fact that the communists are so dangerous to us.
If you want to understand my political philosophy, here's the basic tenet. I think the job of a United States Senator is to seek to translate into legislation values that promote the welfare of people. The keystone of the Constitution is the General Welfare Clause. And the wealth of America is its people, not its materialism. And my job as a senator is to try to be a pacemaker in proposing legislation that will advance the interests of people.
More than anybody else in the nation, he initiated the fight, he carried on the fight, regardless of its political consequences to him. So he was an effective public servant, and you shouldn't judge the fact that he didn't win all of his fights. The fact that he fought them, somebody else will win them in days to come.
That's when the foundations of the mistakes Churchill pledged British forces and he would pledge American forces, and then they'd go across the Channel and pledge to Mendes France that they would join France in continuing the Indochina War. That's one of the beginnings of the mistake. But Mendes France had heard from the French people. Churchill turned him down. Mendes France turned him down.